All right, guys, we are back for another reading vlog, and this one, since it is February, is also a romance reading vlog. Now, this is the second reading vlog that I'm doing for the month, so I hope that you enjoy romance books and specifically historical romance for this video. My name is Jordan. This is Books with Brushu. I like to drink coffee and read books, and I hope y'all are having a fabulous day and a fabulous month of February. Now, let's jump into the books that I am wanting to read during this reading vlog. So the first one is Devil of the Highlands by Lynsay Sands. This is a historical romance set in the 13th century, and it takes place in England and Scotland. Let's go ahead and read the back of the book just so we can kind of get an introduction to our characters. So, they call him the Devil. He is the most notorious laird of Scotland, fierce, cold, deadly, and maybe even worse. Yet, Evalinda has just agreed to wed him, anything she thinks is better than her cruel stepmother. Though Evalinda should be wary of the rumors, she can't help but be drawn to this warrior, for the Devil of the Highlands inspires a heat within her that is unlike anything she has ever known. We're gonna get to read about this devil laird who is supposedly super mean, and this English lady. I'm on chapter 2. I'm on page 20. And so I'm not far into this at all. I mean, like 20 pages. The scene where they meet, it's so unbelievable and so cringeworthy. So cringeworthy. Her stepmother is a bitch, and so she takes off, Evalinda takes off on her horse and goes to this little meadow where she likes to hang out. Well, she hikes up her skirts and steps into the stream that's going through the meadow, and by some turn of events ends up falling into the water, and she's soaking wet from head to toe. Instead of, going home because she's soaking wet, she decides to take her dress off, so she's only in her undergarments because she's so cold. And she thinks, well, I can't just sit here in my undergarments soaking wet, and I need to dry my dress somehow. So she hops on her horse and has her horse sprint back and forth through this meadow while she's holding her dress out to try to dry it off. And this is the moment where the laird and his crew of Scottish men come up on their horses into this meadow. The laird says, okay, you guys go on around, and I'm gonna stay here and see what this is about. So he comes up on his horse, and she's going back and forth with the dress and trying to hold the horse's reins, and she doesn't see him come up on his horse next to her. Well, then out of the corner of her eye, she glimpses him, and since the reins are in her teeth, she jerks back her head like, surprised, and the horse stops abruptly and like almost, kicks her off. Well, that scares his horse, and he does get thrown from his horse, and he hits his head. So he's laying on the ground, and she comes over, and she's just in her undergarments that are see-through, and she comes over and she's like leaning over him, like, oh my gosh, you're hurt. And he's tangled up in her dress. So he's got this dress all wrapped around him, and she's trying to get the dress off. And he starts having a panic attack, and he's like, get this thing off me. And he's like ripping it. So he ends up ripping this dress off to get it off of him. Well, then she grabs the dress, realizes there's blood on it. She's like, oh my gosh, you're bleeding. So she immediately like picks up his head and like puts it between her boobs as she's like looking for where he's bleeding. And she's like freaking out. And so he's trying to tell her to calm down. Well, he's smothered between her breasts in an attempt to get air so, he can breathe and try to communicate to her. He turns his head to the side, and in that movement, her nipple just pops into his mouth. I was like, what? So her nipple just pops into his mouth, and what's a man supposed to do? There's a nipple in his mouth. So he sucks on it. I was like, what is going on? What is going on? Like, are you kidding me right now? This is so unbelievable. Like, it is so vastly unbelievable. It was right before bed, so that's where I stopped reading, but I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So I hope this gets a little bit better. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. Just, you know, anyway, that's Devil of the Highlands that I've started so far. So the next book that I want to read, which I should have grabbed, it's back in my library slash craft room. What you doing, baby? The next book that I want to read is Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. So I've been wanting to read more classics lately. So this technically is a historical romance. I have loved the Jane Austen books that I've read. I've read Pride and Prejudice and I think Persuasion, and I've really enjoyed them both. So I'm excited to jump into Sense and Sensibility and read it. So those are the two books that I'm planning on reading during this reading vlog. So once I get more into the Devil of the Highlands, I will come back for an update. All right, team, here for an update on the Devil of the Highlands. I am on page 175, which is 50% of the way through this book. So I am making my way very quickly through this. I have to say, I do like it more than I did at the very beginning. The first scene where they meet was outrageous, but from then on, it has become way more believable, and I like it much better. So we are introduced to Cullen. He is the main male character, and he is Scottish, and he's from the Highlands. And then we also have Evelyn, which I was saying her name incorrectly before. It's Evelyn. Evelyn, she's English, and her mean, nasty stepmother wants to marry her off to the Devil of the Highlands. And he is supposedly this mean brute who has killed his father and killed his uncle so that he could take their place as laird, and also killed his previous wife. But of course, none of that's true. She was not upset about leaving with him. She wanted to leave her mean stepmother. There were some things that happened in the meadow in the first scene between the two that it gave the wrong impression to other people who didn't know what actually went on. Wrong impression was something very, very bad, that something very, very bad had happened. And the stepmother was elated at this. She kept telling Cullen how you need to beat her so that she will submit to you, you know, with a firm hand, blah, blah, blah. Right away, he couldn't stand the stepmother, knew that she was treating Evelyn bad, and immediately married her, and they left so that they could get out of there. They went on a nonstop journey to the Highlands. Cullen is very quiet and doesn't speak a lot. He speaks through his actions. And Evelyn doesn't love that he doesn't talk to her and doesn't tell her things. And it's caused a couple of arguments between them. But we're finally getting to the point where Cullen understands that he needs to, you know, talk to her, and the reasons that he needs to talk to her, because he thinks, well, my actions have been showing her that I'm nothing but a good man. I've been taking her feelings and literally everything she needs into consideration, which is true. It is 100% true. He's just not discussing anything with her. So she's thinking this whole time, oh, he doesn't care about me, this, and this, when really he has already taken care of those things. He just didn't tell her that he did. They're working through some stuff. There's also a bit of a mystery going on, because since he did not kill his uncle, his father, or his previous wife, somebody did. They're all labeled as accidents, but I don't think anybody actually believes that. They're just saying that to protect themselves. So I think there's a bit of an underlying mystery on who actually murdered those three people and why. And are they gonna come after Cullen? Are they gonna come after Evelyn? We don't know. So that's where I'm at, 175 pages in. I'm so glad that I'm enjoying this much more. I'm so glad. So I will come back in for an update once I'm further or maybe finished. I don't know. We'll just see how quickly I get through it. All right, back for another reading update. And I have cat hair all over my face. Anyway, I have finished Devil of the Highlands by Lindsay Sands. I read this audio and physically at the same time, which, because I'm such a slow physical reader, if I listen to the audiobook while I'm reading, I actually get through the books faster. And I know that's the opposite of some people, but for me, I read books faster if I'm listening to the audiobook at the same time, which is silly. But anyway, I finished this book and I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. Based on the first scene where I was so like turned off, it got immensely better from there on. We continue to follow Cullen and Evelyn as they're trying to solve this mystery. It's them and slowly developing a relationship, but also trying to solve this mystery of who has murdered all of Cullen's relatives and why. And a bunch of things continue to happen to Evelyn where they appear to be like, if the thing had actually happened, then it would have appeared to have been an accident. Like if she would have died, it would have appeared to have been an accident, but none of them were actual accidents. Like somebody was trying to kill her. Just like somebody killed his uncle, his father, and his previous wife. So at the very, very end of the book, we finally figure it out. It's kind of obvious who it is, but that's okay. You know, it's kind of meant to be. It's kind of obvious who it is, and then you actually find out that it's that person. You're also getting the slow development of their relationship. They're getting to know each other because obviously they didn't know each other before, and they're learning each other. You get that part of their relationship, really just them trying to develop and, you know, feelings for each other. So I really enjoyed this book and I gave it 3.75 stars, and I will be continuing the series. I will probably listen to them on audiobook and not buy the physical book. I think I got this at the library sale, so it was like 25 cents or something. I don't know. I probably will be continuing the series. So it's at least on my series list to continue, my series to continue list. So the next book that I'm picking up for this historical romance reading vlog is Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. One of the booktubers that I watch, Christy Reads a Lot, she and some other people, I don't know exactly who, they have a Jane Austen book club or a Jane Austen read along happening for the whole year of 2026. Now, they've already read Sense and Sensibility and they've already done the live like discussion show for it, which is fine. I was a little late on the train. I got behind on a bunch of my YouTube videos because, you know, the Christmas and the holiday season and everything, and that's so busy, and I was recording a bunch of extra videos, plus working, plus going to visit my family, etc. So I didn't realize that they were doing a Jane Austen read along. I caught on to that late and didn't have a chance to read this book by the time they had the live show. So I'm gonna read it now because I want to read it anyways, and it's a romance. And February is the perfect time to read romance books. So I'm gonna jump into this. Honestly, I haven't seen any of the movies. So I don't even really know what this book is about. I know that sounds silly, but I don't. I love Pride and Prejudice. It's one of my favorites, and I've read the book multiple times. And I like the Keira Knightley version of the movie the best, and I've seen that movie so many times because I freaking love it so much. Sense and Sensibility is a delightful comedy of manners in which the sisters Eleanor and Marianne represent these two qualities. Eleanor's character is one of Augustine's what? This doesn't say what the book is about. I did recently get a bundle, a box, a set. I did recently get a set of these Wordsworth classics of the Jane Austen books because I love these covers. And Christy Reads a Lot, she actually got them recently too, and I saw them on one of her videos and I was like, oh my gosh, those are way cuter than the versions that I have. The versions that I have are the Barnes & Noble Classics, which are fine. They're just not that pretty. So, and the version of Sense and Sensibility I have is a mass market paperback size. So it's this size versus this size. So, and this one's just a little bit easier for me to read. I will check back in once I have actually started this book because I haven't started it yet. All right, guys, we're back for a little reading update on Sense and Sensibility. So I have recently started this and I am only on page 52, chapter 14. So we are still getting introduced to the characters, getting to know them, getting to know their personalities. So we have three sisters, Eleanor, Marianne, and Margaret, and then their mom. They have an older half brother. Three sisters' mom is the dad's second wife. Well, the dad dies in the story like right away and leaves the estate and all of his money and everything to his son. Well, his son and the son's wife decide that even though the son promised the dad that he would take care of his stepmom and three half sisters, that they don't really want to do that because they're selfish and they don't want to give them the money that they, you know, deserve as their inheritance and blah, blah, blah. So they are each like talking each other into like less and less throughout their conversation. They're like, oh, well, I'll give the girls £1,000 a year. And the mom, like, whatever. And then the wife says, well, you know, because of this and this, they're living here and the living expenses. And then, you know, when they move into their own house, we'll give them furniture and some china and dishes and whatever. So really, and they won't need a carriage, so they won't need horses, and they won't need many servants because they're not going to have any visitors or any people come to their house. They're not going to have parties. So instead of £1,000 a year, we should only give them £500 a year because look at all this other stuff that we're giving them, blah, blah, blah. So they like keep talking each other down to give them less and less. So they're, you know, obviously upset about this. And through some other circumstances, the stepmom, the mother of the three girls, gets a letter from her cousin who lives somewhere else in England saying, hey, I know your husband just died. Why don't you and the girls come here and live on my estate? There's a little house for you. You can live here like rent free, whatever. They pack up and they move to this place. Well, of course, the cousin likes to have a lot of visitors and likes to throw parties. So the girls are getting to meet a lot of boys and like, you know, socialize with people in the area. The girls are like young teens. I think Eleanor, who's the oldest, is like, I don't know, 18 or something like that. They're rather young. I can't remember their exact ages, but two of the girls one day are out like running around their property, and I guess there's like a big hill on the property or something, and they were racing down it, and one of the girls tripped and fell. There was this guy riding his horse and saw her fall, and he comes running over and rushing over, and he picks her up and he carries her into the house. That was Marianne. And so now there's a budding romance between the two of them. They're like inseparable, and he comes over to their house every day to see her. And Marianne also, through all of the dinner parties that the mother's cousin was throwing, there was this older gentleman who was 35. And because they're, you know, they're teenagers. I think the youngest is like 13. They're like, oh, this old man, you can't be interested in him. He's been married before, you know, he's just old and decrepit. And like 35 is not that old, okay? Anyway, so they're talking about how old he is. Well, he kind of showed interest in Marianne. Well, now Marianne is with this other cute hunky dude who's closer to her age. So he's a little bit jealous. So really that's as far as I am right now, 50 pages in. So I am enjoying it. That's a little update on this, and I will check back in with you once I am further along in the book. Alright guys, I finished Sense and Sensibility. It took me entirely too long. We'll get into that. It is almost St. Patrick's Day, so I'm wearing my new St. Patrick's Day Bucky shirt that my friend got me. So Super excited to have this on. I finally finished Sense and Sensibility today. I am not sure how long I actually spent reading this book. It's not the book's fault. It has everything to do with me. I enjoyed the book. I liked it. So I started this book right after I finished reading the Bonds That Tie series by Jay Bree. So if you watched my February reading wrap-up, which I will link in the description below, you'll know that I read 6 out of the 7 books in the Bonds That Tie series in 6 days. I absolutely devoured that series. I loved it. It is one of my all-time favorites. However, it put me into a little bit of a reading slump because I didn't want to read anything else. After finishing 6 books in 6 days, I was kind of tired of reading and I wanted to just do other stuff around the house, watch TV, watch the Olympics because it was February still. I wasn't in the mood to read for extended periods of time. So March has started off a little bit slow for me in the reading realm. I was listening to the audiobook of this and also reading the physical book at the same time. I think where I left off, I hadn't gotten very far into the book. I left off and Marianne had been talking to Willoughby, who had found her after she stumbled down a hill, and they were pretty much inseparable after that for a couple of weeks while he was visiting that area. This book centers mostly around the 2 of the 3 eldest daughters of the Dashwood family, so it mostly focuses around Eleanor and Marianne. A little while after Willoughby leaves the area and goes somewhere else very abruptly, upsetting Marianne very deeply, Mrs. Jennings, who is the mother of Lady Middleton, who is the wife of Sir John, who is the relation to Mrs. Dashwood, the mother's sister, or the girl's mother. The 2 eldest girls, Eleanor and Marianne, go off with Mrs. Jennings to London to stay for a couple of months to visit, as high society women back then did, where they got up each day, got dressed, got ready, and went to visit other people around the city and talk and gossip, etc. The 2 eldest girls went to London to keep Mrs. Jennings company. Mrs. Jennings was primarily going there because her daughter was pregnant, having a baby. It's a lot of day-to-day in London, them going to visit people, going to balls, going to dances, gossip, drama, etc. As soon as they arrive, Marianne immediately sends a letter off to Willoughby because she knows that he's in London. And so she wants to let him know immediately that she's there so that they can see each other. Eleanor's beau, who she's been talking to, Edward, he is supposedly also in the area. However, Eleanor finds some things out about Edward and a different lady who is poor and but she's a relation to Mrs. Jennings, the lady who is supposedly with Edward. This lady, Lucy, she tells Eleanor about her feelings for Edward, how they met, and that they're engaged and blah blah. And Lucy's like, she doesn't say this out loud, but in her head she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, Edward doesn't, no. She's like, Edward wants to be with me. So there's that whole drama. Well, then it's been a couple of days and Marianne still hasn't heard from Willoughby. He supposedly stopped by while they were gone to have a visit, and she sent him multiple letters and he hasn't responded back. Well, then they get invited to a ball. Willoughby's there with another woman. We have all these instances of these men that have been lying because they're actually with other women or engaged to other women or have been courting other women and not telling the truth about it. And some other stuff with Willoughby happens. Colonel Brandon, who is a friend of Sir John Middleton, who had been visiting at their house so that the girls got to know him quite well at their dinner parties and stuff. Colonel Brandon knows a lot of stuff about Willoughby, sees how upset Marianne is over Willoughby with this other woman. Colonel Brandon comes and tells Eleanor, he's like, hey, your sister needs to be not upset over Willoughby. She's better off because he did X, Y, and Z and he's a douche. So obviously they tell Marianne. She's extremely upset, won't leave her room, crying, unconsolable, which is understandable because The dude has done nothing but lie to her the entire time he's known her. Early 1800s. Jane Austen's writing this book. It is nice to know in the last over 200 years that men have not changed. Men have not changed. They are still lying. They're still deceiving. They're still trying to cover up their transgressions. They're still trying to live their best lives, and who cares about who they hurt along the way? Like, nothing has changed. Literally nothing has changed in over 200 years. Like, come on. Can we not develop and start treating women better? Like, why? These women trusted these men based off of their actions, and all it was fucking lies. This is ridiculous. Like, these freaking dudes. And then later on down the line, something happens with Marianne. Willoughby's concerned, so he comes by. Luckily doesn't see her, but talks to Eleanor, and he's like, here, let me explain to you all of these things. And it's like, your explanation blows because you're actually a douche. And you did all of those things. Just because you're trying to explain it away, your reasons aren't good. He's like, yeah, you know, I couldn't marry a poor woman because I just like to spend too much money, and I like to be around friends who spend too much money. So I couldn't marry a poor woman. Because heaven forbid you be frugal with your money and not just blow it on whatever, hanging out with your friends and drinking and gambling. Like, he took no responsibility for that. He was basically like, that's just how I am. And I knew that I wouldn't be able, and I knew I wouldn't be able to do that if I married Marianne. When we first met, it was just a game to me flirting with her. I didn't actually like her. But then I started developing feelings for her, so then it's okay. Even though it didn't start off that way, I still developed feelings for her, so it was okay. I'm like, what? No. And then this whole thing with Edward, adamantly engaged to this Lucy girl, to the point where his mother disowns him, so he has no inheritance. Like, his mother does not want to talk to him or see Lucy. He was adamant that he was going to marry her no matter what, is trying to plan his life so that he can support this girl. Well, she goes off and gets married to someone else, and he's basically like, okay, well, now that I'm not obligated to marry this chick anymore, who I didn't really love in the first place, although 2 weeks earlier, I was adamant about wanting to marry her to the whole detriment of my life, even though I knew I didn't love her, instead of telling the truth. And now that she went off and married someone else, now I'm scot-free and I can go get Eleanor, the woman I really do want to marry. I'm like, dude, just tell the fucking truth. Tell the fucking truth. All of this could have been way easier if you just told the truth. It wasn't even like Lucy was pregnant or that they had had sex or anything like that. He had no obligations to her other than 5 years ago when he was in his early teens, he proposed to her, and now he's changed his mind. So instead of telling her that he's changed his mind and doesn't love her like that anymore, he totally upsets his whole life. And I'm like, just tell the truth. Like, messes with Eleanor's feelings because she felt led on because now he's engaged to this other chick. The men in here. Then Eleanor and Marianne do end up getting married. But I'm like, why are these men doing all of this to these poor women? But overall, I did enjoy the book. And that's the whole point, right? You're writing these characters. It was of the times, but it's also a little bit dramatized and blah, blah, blah. Or maybe not dramatized, I don't know. But still, it's just because I didn't love the characters doesn't mean I didn't like the book. It was still a good book, right? Not my favorite Jane Austen book. That still goes to Pride and Prejudice. But, you know, Mr. Darcy was also a dick in that book, too. Anyway, I ended up giving Sense and Sensibility 3.5 stars. So, still a really good rating, still above 50%. Really enjoyed the book. That wraps up this historical romance reading vlog. I hope that you enjoyed it. Sorry that it's so late in coming out, but I have been really busy and also in a little bit of a reading slump. Busy and in a reading slump, so there's that. Thank you for tuning into this video. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.